I'm gonna show you how Sona is played this season, alright? You take these runes, which, look, do you see that? Do you see that right there? That's Revitalize. Revitalize sucks. Revitalize is what you take when you know all you're gonna do is sit around and be a fucking W bot. You're trying to squeeze all the heal and shield power that you can out of your build, every last drop, and you're sacrificing other runes like Presence of Mind just for that little itty bitty shitty bonus. Why is this different from last season? Because the support item is different. Back in the day you had to take Spell Thieves because Spell Thieves gave mana regen, and that meant you had to poke enemies for support gold, which means you had to play League of Legends. With the new support item, you can just do this for your support gold. So, as you can see, the meta strategy right now is just to play very safely during laning phase. Lame. Poking was what made Sona fun because it was kind of fucking stupid. It was like playing Dark Souls, right? It was all dodge and hit, and the moment you slipped up, you would die. Now it's more like playing like balloons. Look, if you're still out here playing Sona, still playing on the Rift, you're a weirdo. The superior way to experience League of Legends is already here, and it's called Swarm. But I must confess, I'm a weirdo too, and I find this new way of playing Sona to be incredibly boring, which is why I'm going to show you a few builds that are more focused towards having fun. Did you hear what I just said? Fun. These are for fun, as in, do not use these in ranked, don't even play ranked at all. These are not meta Korean 1v9 elo slingshot builds, these are for like a 3-stack in norms. Moreover, they are not very calculated or very thought out, so don't take them too seriously. Don't bring them up when you're discussing builds on very serious forums. And, just to reiterate, do not use them in ranked. I think that should be enough bubble wrap, so let's get started. Here's how this is going to work. I'm going to show you the build with a nice visual, and you can pause it and screenshot it if you want to look at it later. And then I'll talk a bit about it, tell you what I think about it. Are you ready? Because these are about to suck. This first one is an AP build. Well, okay, it doesn't look a whole lot like an AP build, but don't worry, this isn't the only one. I have two. Anyways, this should look pretty familiar. And honestly, it's not much of an AP build. It's more like a side grade from TF2. This is what I call the poke build, because it focuses heavily on poking, both in lane and later on in the game. It's sort of similar to what you'd see last season, but with a heavier focus on AP. Obviously, we have Presence of Mind because we'll be making use of it again. I'm taking Heal because honestly, it's the only viable option. You need Heal in just about every build because Sona gets one-shot by literally everything, and this is your get-out-of-jail-free card for unavoidable pinches in laning phase. It'll save your ass, just take it. I know I said it was for pussies, but man, this game has changed, alright? It's grown on me. Not to help my ADC, but to help myself. Speaking of which, Echoes of Helia is the main item here, and I swear, people will tell you this item sucks, but honestly, on Sona, it's not bad. I mean, maybe I'm missing something here, but the numbers I get and the impact I feel can even surpass Moonstone. It's not perfect, I'd rather be building the Grail, but personally, it's my favorite core item for this champion. Archangel's Staff would normally be what makes this an AP build, but that's kind of standard now, so for a third item, I take Lichbane. It lets our poke damage stay somewhat relevant, and it helps us clear wards. At this point in the game, we're really not doing much else, so I think that's pretty good. There's not a concrete final item to this build, but if you're still trying to win at that point in the game, use your best judgment and build what your team needs. Let's be realistic, your team is probably going to need healing, so maybe take Redemption. I know this is supposed to be AP focused, but look, I'm not done with AP builds just yet. While the poke build is a nice middle ground, there are two AP Sona builds that go all in on damage. It's a stupid thing to do because Sona's damage is forced by Riot Games to be really weak and to suck ass. But here it is anyways. AP Sona support, or as some people called it back when it actually worked, Shotgun Sona. First Strike may seem like a strange pick, but remember, we're doing this for fun. And trying to proc First Strike in lane is a lot of fun. It's like having an extra minigame. I know it just got nerfed, I know the rest of this tree sucks, I don't care. This time we start out with Lichbane because it's really good. Make sure you get a tier at some point for mana. Now, Archangel Staff is second item again. Okay, I do like this item, but I'm starting to get sick of seeing it so much, to the point where maybe you could swap it out for Rod of Ages. But if you're gonna do that, you have to build Rod first, otherwise you probably won't ever see it finish. At any rate, you're gonna end up with some mana, some damage, and not much else. And while your damage isn't going to be insane and certainly won't hold a candle to actual mages or champions that Riot actually likes, most players aren't going to expect the fucking spanking they'll receive when they walk into your auto range. Honestly, the element of surprise is the strongest part of this build. But eventually, they're going to get wise to your tricks and realize that you're a total glass cannon, or maybe more like a glass pistol, and they'll just target you in fights because you're not a real champion and you can't really do anything about it. So, for your next item, be realistic and get Zhonya's. Yes, even on top of a Seraph's, trust me, you're still going to need this. Remember, damage is balanced around real champions that Riot wants in the meta, not Sona. You can't take it, but you can dish it, kinda. The damage sucks. It's fun, but it sucks. You can try to mitigate that by skipping Zhonya's and building one of the new fancy AP items, but it's gonna feel like you're getting diminishing returns. And that makes this build kinda completely unviable in just about every situation, barring incompetent enemy lanes, common as they may be. Which reminds me, some people will tell you to build higher damage in lower elo ranked because it makes you less reliant on your shitty teammates. Let's be clear, you did not hear that from me. AP Sona support is one thing, but AP Sona as a solo lane also exists. It's not very good. As much as I wish there was some way to make Sona work as a solo laner, there just isn't. There's no fucking way. You can't farm, you can't kill anything, you just have to wait for shit to happen so you can roam or harass or whatever. Every matchup is so unfair that it's just impossible to have any fun. But if you're gonna do it anyways, build Rod of Ages. Same thing in Arena. Sona is just not a playable champion in this mode. But if you're gonna do it, build Rod. Rod, then Archangels, so that if nothing else, at least you'll scale. It sucks anyways because your abilities do nothing. Remember, the more teammates Sona has around her, the stronger she is because of her auras. Having only one teammate means she's just kind of unplayable, barring good augment luck. It's just not fun, it's not cool to make your duo play with it. Don't do it, but now you know how to do it. Once you try this build, I think you'll get a good idea of its strength. Even when you get to Stomp lane and have a big lead, you're gonna find that there are a lot of champions who your damage doesn't apply to, among other champions who actually get blown up by AP Sona. So I guess it's kind of a mixed bag. And that's the reason why I even showed you the Helia's poke build, because it lets you do some of that damage while still being a useful enchanter. You can be a bit aggressive and you can still carry team fights. It's the best of both worlds, and alright, I'll admit, it's not very unique, and it's probably not why you're here. So while the poke build will likely be the most viable build in this video, and while full AP will possibly be the most fun build in this video, hear me out on this next one, because it just might take both spots. This is what I rambled about in my last video, the move speed Sona build, and this is my build. Sure, I'm definitely not the first person to build Shurelya's on Sona, but I think I might be the first person to build it alongside mobility boots, or nowadays symbiotic souls, while taking Ghost, Celerity, Water Walking, a movement speed shard, and magical footwear. When I say move speed Sona, I mean all in on move speed Sona, because movement speed is a very strong stat. Now, a lot of you probably just see Shurelya's as the shittier half of the mythic item that it used to be, but it's actually kind of important, because if you go all the way back to Sona's champion spotlight, this was the item that you would build on her back then, though it was known as Shurelya's Reverie, which was a Toho reference. Obviously that was too fun for modern Riot to keep, so they had to rename it, though Shurelya is a reference to a past game designer at Riot by the same name, who according to the wiki, did a Sona rework. In fact, this item was added to the game in the very same patch as Sona. It was basically made for her. Granted, it was removed in Season 3 and was only added back in Season 8. Yeah, there's a very deep rabbit hole of League item history that we could get into here, but alright, big picture. Once upon a time, from what I gather, this was the Sona item. Why is that important today? It's not. I just wanted to talk about it. I should disclose that this build has been heavily nerfed since I talked about it last season. I think it's somewhat unintentional, but Riot has severely limited the accessibility of move speed for champions who don't have a ridiculous amount of it by default. And you know, the more I look for it, the more I realize some champions just have a ton of move speed for no good reason, while other champions don't. We're not here to deal with that today, but do realize that Sona, despite having her E, is one of those champions who doesn't get any spectacular move speed numbers. Not by default anyways. The approach I took last season was centered around Shurelya's, which at the time was a mythic and a really fucking good one at that, because it meant you would speed yourself and allies up pretty much any time you used an ability, on top of the active that gave you extra move speed. It was badass. That, combined with Mobies, Water Walking, and Ghost, let you hit some pretty high speeds, which was fun enough to do already, never mind how useful it was for your team. Naturally, Riot has since removed the good part of Shurelya's, removed Mobies outright, nerfed Water Walking so hard it's colloquially known as water crawling, and nerfed Ghost too. So yeah, not exactly the build it was last year. But new Shurelya's combined with Staff of Flowing Water and Ardent Sensor lets you get pretty close to where things were last season. It just comes at the price of being a pretty ugly build. I'll tell you what, Ardent is kind of optional, it's just what I tend to prefer. The important parts are Shurelya's and Flowing Water, along with Boots. I strongly recommend the Mobies replacement, but Swifties aren't super duper horribly bad. You may think that maybe Phase Rush or another support item might help too. They don't. I tried, and they just don't. So this is what we have, and while it is kinda silly, I've found it to be an incredibly useful build in a lot of very common situations. Jungler takes a bad fight in the river, I'm there, with water crawling giving me a small advantage too. Stuck in bot lane when a roam opportunity comes up, no problem. Anywhere you're needed on the map, you can get there very fast. You become your team's own dust-off chopper, ready to medevac your allies at a moment's notice. It's kind of amazing, and if you can find a comfortable middle ground between move speed and enchanter power, without sacrificing too much of either, you just might have a decently viable build. for a normal game. Again, don't use my builds in ranked. I have an 11% win rate this split. I only hope that more move speed options become available again, so we can reach the high speeds possible in Season 13. But as long as no more nerfs happen, I think this build should stay in decent shape for a little while. Try it out, see if you like it, see if it's useful, see if it sucks, and let me know what you think, because I've been really eager to get it out there. Now, all the builds I've covered thus far are somewhat logical, falling in line with Sona's design, emphasizing different parts of her kit by shifting power from one thing to another. Again, like TF2 side grades. These next two builds are not logical. Let's start with this one. If you don't know what a WhatsApp build is, it's basically just green. Green skin chroma, green spells, green runes, green items. I don't really get the joke, but apparently it's really funny. When trying to come up with a WhatsApp build for Sona, I accidentally stumbled across the Tank Sona build. You've probably seen shit like Tank Senna or Tank Soraka. You may even have seen Schubart do some weird Tank Sona thing with Rod of Ages. But this is not that. This is like the only way you can build tank items on Sona without getting permabanned. You start with a redemption for its healing power and HP. Then, I have these support tank items up here, but really just build whatever the fuck you want. It won't matter, because the enemy team will be able to ignore you until your entire team is dead. Then they'll just kill you after. Yet, for some reason, I've had some pretty successful games with this build, but I think those may have been games that I could have won without any items at all. I don't know, it's kind of fun to be a little tanky, but since Sona isn't a real champion, you never get to be an actual tank. You gain a little tiny bit of resistance and lose all your sustain. I mean, maybe there's a middle ground somewhere that lets you have both and be OP, but for some reason, I doubt it. You're welcome to try. I left Warmogs in there, that might do something. If you want, you can just say fuck it and build real tank items. You'll be tankier for it. Look, I understand maybe that was not the most prestigious build I covered. This next one is bad. Listen. We were all new players once, okay? When I was very new to the game, I would sometimes build Nashor's Tooth on Sona. Look, my autos were slow, and it was frustrating, okay? Turns out, it did not make my autos that much faster. Lesson learned. Fast forward a couple years later, probably a summer evening, I had 1 or 2 bad games, maybe 3, you get the picture. And I don't remember what happened specifically. Bad matchup, probably. Something tilted me, and I may have played a game of Sona where I did not level or use a single ability. I built AD and attack speed items, and for the entire game, all I did was auto attack. Not my most 1v9 performance, I'll grant you that. Suffice it to say, bad games happen. But combining those two ideas is how I came up with the machine gun Sona build. Don't build this. Look, I'm not even gonna make it easy. Watch. Here it is, and there it goes. The idea is attack speed and on-hit magic damage. Why? I don't know. It sounds fun, but it really sucks. I mean, AP is kinda underwhelming, but compared to this, it really doesn't seem so bad. Okay, obviously those last builds suck, but I wanted to show them for 2 reasons. 1, I think they're funny, and 2, they're a good example of the many things Sona cannot do. The truth is, Riot wants Sona to be a simplistic enchanter and nothing else. And that's fair enough. It's what's best for balance, but even outside the Rift, I swear, Sona just isn't allowed to be good or be anything. Meanwhile, champs like Pantheon get AP ratios on the Rift just to keep some stupid fucking AP ARAM build alive. Tell me this, do Sona players really want to have 0 engagement with the game and just press W? No. Wanna know why? Go watch my other video. It sucks to see how mundane Sona's playstyle has become this season, and it really sucks that alternative playstyles are so severely limited. And looking at all the shit other champions get to do, it's kinda ridiculous. Now, am I trying to say that Tank Sona and Machine Gun Sona should be viable? No, those builds are fucking stupid, forget you even saw them. What I'm saying is, the meta is boring. The build that you're expected to use right now really only utilizes your W, which means the only things that are really effective are your W and your R. Everything else is just brushed off as utility, it's not very impactful, and all that stuff happens to be like most of your kit, your power chords, your Q, your E. I find it frustrating, I find it stupid, and I find it makes the champion not fun to play. But don't worry, I know a lot of you who subscribed want to see more Sona, and I'm not finished with this champ yet. There's still a lot left unsaid. The golden ratio, no man's land, the blue side ward conundrum, the support ward handshake, you get the point. I have a lot left to talk about when it comes to Sona. The thing is, League is really terrible. So here's the deal. Just like always, I'm probably gonna disappear again for a couple months. Call it part of my process. But I promise you this, I will come back with something cool. It might be Sona, it might be some other game, whatever it is, I hope to see you then. Oh, and if you want to use the builds, you can copy the item sets from the description of this video. If you don't know how that works, figure it out.